Alright, guys, so let's talk about energy today. If there's one big theme in today's geopolitics, it's all about self sufficiency. And this is especially true when it comes to countries in the BRICS, especially China and Russia. Today, we have two big updates that will just change the landscape when it comes to energy and currencies. China has ramped up their nuclear ambitions to the next level, while Russia, they are escalating their de-dollarization plan. Now, out of nowhere, China has confirmed a shocking $31 billion nuclear power push. Beijing has approved the building of 11 nuclear reactors across the country. In fact, if you throw in the previous 2 years, over 30 reactors are being built. We must understand how critical China's nuclear agenda is. For any country, especially a manufacturing giant, you need uninterrupted energy to power your economy. China is the world's biggest consumer of energy, and they have a rather dynamic energy mix. However, there is a glaring problem with the picture over here. Over 70% comes from fossil fuels like coal, crude oil, and gas, and a lot of these are from imports oil from the Middle East, gas from Russia, and coal from Australia, just to name a few, which means they can get blocked or cut away in a worst case scenario. Around 25% comes from renewable energy, but you can't really rely on solar or wind for stability. They provide intermittent energy at most, and storing them can be rather costly. And this is why China is making a big pivot towards nuclear power, and they are spending a fortune to accelerate the pace of progress. By 2035, Beijing wants 10% of their electricity to come from nuclear power, and by 2060, the goal will be almost 20%. It's easy to understand why nuclear power is extremely efficient compared to traditional fossil fuel technology. Nuclear power has the highest capacity factor of any energy source at 92.5%, and this makes it more reliable than natural gas, solar, and even coal. They can produce maximum power almost all year round. And if there's ever a conflict with the West when the energy supply gets cut away, Chinese industries will survive. The more nuclear plants they have, Beijing can easily switch away from traditional fossil fuels. In terms of their reactor build-out, Beijing is going to leave the West in the dust very soon, which is quite strange considering countries like France and the US had a big head start. After all, the Manhattan Project, the A-bomb race, Oppenheimer, was won by the US. In just a few years, China's nuclear capacity will surpass France with almost 82 gigawatts, and that's within striking distance from the US. America's own capacity has stayed relatively stagnant since the 1990s. And because of China's consistent building of all these plants, they have taken their nuclear technology to the next level. This quantum leap is not just beneficial for Chinese industries, it is a powerful chess piece on the global scale. China is ahead of the US in nuclear technology. Now, this gap is as wide as 15 years in conventional reactors. But a breakthrough by the Chinese is about to flip the script in diplomacy itself. They are building the world's first thorium molten salt nuclear power plant, and this will be completed and operational by 2029. Now, this type of reactor brings very powerful benefits. Thorium is a powerful replacement for uranium reactors. Firstly, because China has a ton of thorium reserves. They possess over 100,000 tons of thorium, and that's equivalent to 20,000 years of energy production. Once this technology becomes widely scalable, importing fossil fuels like natural gas won't really be an issue anymore. China will be self sufficient for all their energy needs, which secures their manufacturing based economy. The second breakthrough puts China leagues ahead of the US and France, and this allows Beijing to become an exporter of power generation technology to the world. And this comes from the molten salt nuclear technology. The key feature of a molten salt reactor is the ability to operate it without water. Instead of water, you pump liquid salt throughout the system to cool the nuclear reactor. And this allows you to build nuclear plants in very harsh conditions far away from a water source. You can even build one in the desert. You are no longer constricted to rivers or the coastlines by the sea. Many countries are looking to move away from fossil fuels. Saudi Arabia is one great example. They have been trying to develop their civilian nuclear capabilities, but the US doesn't want to help. In return for normalizing relations with Israel, the kingdom wants a US agreement on nuclear cooperation. And that means getting US technology and expertise to build a uranium enrichment facility. Now, this is a struggle because the US doesn't want to give it up. At the same time, MBS desperately wants to diversify his economy away from fossil fuels as well. And this is where China comes into the picture. Their thorium molten salt reactor is the game changer. If Washington doesn't want to play ball, Beijing can always export their technology to the Saudis. And this will weaken America's position in the Middle East and strengthen China's relations with Saudi Arabia even further. China's nuclear push goes beyond its own energy security. That's important, but the ability to export technology makes them even more indispensable to the world. As it stands, Russia is the biggest exporter of nuclear reactors in the world, accounting for around 18%. The US is second at 16%, and China is at less than 2%. And this is the situation in 2022. But if Beijing continues their progress, this state of affairs can flip quite easily. It won't just be EVs or solar panels that China dominates and exports out. Very soon, it might be nuclear reactors as well. While energy self sufficiency is important, this will take some time. It will require years and even decades to accomplish. In the meantime, China still needs to import energy, especially from Russia. And that means using currencies and financial institutions to make transactions. But what are we seeing today? The constant threats of targeting the Chinese banking system. Even though we know it will unleash a disaster, the US still has a burning desire to punish China no matter the cost.
Is how do we deal with the fact that the sheer size of the Chinese economy dwarfs what we've been contending with in the form of Iran, Russia, and so on. One of the first things the Biden administration did in the wake of Russia's attack was start sanctioning Russian banks and de-swifting them. And that's one thing when you're going after an economy smaller than the size of Texas. It's quite another when you consider that out of the 100 largest banks in the world, China has 20, and all four of the top four are Chinese banks. And that is why many within the Treasury contended when I was there, and they will contend to this day, that these Chinese banks are simply too big to sanction. I don't agree that we can allow that to stand, but I do believe we have to start taking very swift action to put us in a situation where we could take punitive measures on these banks if necessary.
China understands this threat very well. Russia also understands the incredible pressure Washington can impose on the Chinese banking system. If Biden, Trump, or Harris one day decides to cut China away from SWIFT in the immediate term, this will be very painful. A huge amount of trade can essentially grind to a halt. And to counter this, Moscow and Beijing, they are embarking on barter trade. And this could come as early as this autumn. Deals involving agriculture could be involved, and it's a move to limit the use of the banking system. They are being monitored by the US. Even though transactions move through the Chinese banks, the US still has ways to track who sells what and who buys what. Now, if you're laughing at this, I get the skepticism. Barter trade sounds really ancient. And there's a purpose why money was invented in the first place. It's to make trade a million times easier. But in Russia and China's case, this is an existential problem that has to be solved. Since the start of the Ukraine conflict, China and Russia they have been de-dollarizing their trade. Putin puts it at around 95%, Lavrov says it's over 90%. So at the very least, the majority is outside the US dollar. Russia has been pricing their exports to China in RMB. Since 2024, it's roughly around $10 billion worth every single month. It's a big dependency on a single currency that goes through Chinese banks. The US has been quite vocal about all their threats in this trade for quite a while. From Yellen to Blinken to Sullivan, China's financial system is being targeted. So the urgency to diversify payment options is definitely there. Russia needs to get paid to buy their own critical imports as well. So barter trade is an option that can help solve this problem. The issue with this mechanism is solving the coincidence of wants. is the very reason money and currencies were invented in the first place. Russia and China each have to hold items or resources the other needs. Only then can they bypass transacting in currencies and just exchange these items directly. In most day to day cases, this doesn't work. You might have an apple, but I want oranges. I might have a basket of fish, but you need a bushel of wheat. So no transactions can be done in this case. But China and Russia, they both have goods each other wants. For China, this is simple. Their biggest import from Russia is energy such as oil and gas. In 2023, China bought over 2 million barrels a day of oil from Russia, even more than Saudi Arabia. The volumes increased substantially because the discounts were simply too good. So Russia has a critical import that China wants, and Beijing will keep buying Russian oil for many years and decades to come. It's all part of their energy security plan. For Russia, it's not difficult to identify what they need from China as well. Semiconductors, telecom equipment, and machine tools, they are some of China's biggest exports to Russia, and the amount is increasing fast. And these are some of the dual use goods the West is targeting. It's why the Biden White House is threatening to sanction Chinese banks. In 2023, China exported nearly $1 billion worth of machine tools. We can expect this and other industrial goods to increase over time. Many of these exports comes from Chinese state-owned companies, so if the government wants them to do barter trade, guess what? They will have to do barter trade. It's a top-down directive. We are seeing many creative ways China and Russia are trying to break free from Western sanctions. I guess necessity is really the mother of invention. Now, barter trade is a form of de-dollarization, and don't be surprised if this extends to other critical goods as well. As the economic war continues, we'll begin to see a lot of tech advancements and interesting strategies from Russia and China. It's all about building a separate ecosystem outside of the West. And whether it is energy use or transactions using currencies, building self sufficiencies is very important. Recall what happened back in March last year when President Xi he met Putin. He told him the world would never be the same. That changes not seen for 100 years is already here, and they are driving it together. I don't think you can get a better endorsement of the Russia China partnership. And when you view both of their economies as intertwined, we can start to appreciate how decoupling from the West is quite possible. Now, will this create a lot of chaos? It likely would. Will we see high inflation and uncertainty around the world? The answer, once again, is yes. But the genie is out of the bottle, and this geopolitical battle is only going to get messier. There's no off ramp anymore. But let me know what you think. Can China surpass the West in nuclear power? And is escaping the US dollar possible for the global south? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.